work in a large district in the city center. It's a very poor area with many abandoned houses. We received a call for a welfare check. 2 elderly women had just arrived home. As they were walking toward their house, they heard noises coming from the house to the west of theirs. They went over and said they heard 2 children, a boy and a girl, crying and screaming from the basement of the house. The house was empty, which the women knew for a fact. So they started talking to the children. The kids were yelling about how scared they were, how dark it was, and that they couldn't get out. I get the call and head over with a backup unit. My dispatcher describes all these eerie details, but I ignore my backup because I think this call is stupid, a waste of time, and I don't want to waste other officers' time either. I arrive at the scene and the 2 women are freaking out. These women were black, and combined with the experience they had just gone through, it resulted in some high-level dramatic hysteria at the scene. At first I thought maybe one of their daughters had been kidnapped or something. The way they were reacting, they were completely frantic. I calm them down, but I have to separate them because they keep feeding off each other's energy and getting worked up again. I'm forced to call for backup, which irritates me even more because I still think this is a dumb call. They repeat their stories, which match up pretty well. A common police tactic in criminal investigations is to separate people to check for inconsistencies. Wasn't intentional this time, but it did help confirm their honesty. They insist that they spoke to the children and take me to the basement window where they had the conversation. Just a small, standard rectangular basement window. They repeat what they said to the kids, claiming they talked to them for about 5 minutes. I listen at the window. Nothing. To me, this call is still nonsense. I walk around the house, not really looking for anything specific, just getting a feel for the place. All the windows are secure, all the doors are locked. No one is getting into this house, at least not without signs of forced entry. I go back to the window where the incident happened and notice something odd. The window is fogged up. There's condensation all over it. It's summer, so that's normal for houses with air conditioning. Except this house didn't have a core, at least it wasn't running. Copper coil theft is common, so central air is rare, and this was the only window with condensation in the entire house. No other basement windows, none of the first or second floor windows, just this one. I made the big mistake of thinking out loud about how weird that was, and the 2 women lost it again. Lots of "oh lordy" and "help me Jesus" being thrown around. At this point, I haven't heard a single sound from inside. I have a weird window in a fully locked house. Private property. Secure house. No immediate justification for entering. But does their claim of hearing children count as an urgent circumstance? That's above my pay grade. So I call for a supervisor, which annoys me even more. He arrives, I explain the situation, and he authorizes forced entry. Side note, I love kicking in doors. It rarely happens, but when it does, it's fun. And usually pretty easy. This front door, though, is solid. Takes about 4 kicks, but I finally get it open. The city will reimburse the homeowner for damages. This house is probably 1,120 years old. Smells like mildew and dust with old wooden floors, plaster walls, steep stairs, and no electricity. I go inside, and I'll be honest, I was a little creeped out. But I don't believe in anything paranormal. No way. 100 skeptic. So I'm expecting either a squatter or nothing. Turns out it's nothing. The house is way too clean for its age, undergoing renovations, with drywall stacked on the floors. It's easy to check every corner, and there are no signs of anyone being there. I go back outside, let them know the house is clear, nobody inside, and I'm standing in the street talking to my supervisor. We're just chatting about whatever when I glance at the house. And in the second floor window, the front bedroom, I see something move across the window. I can't tell you what it was. It was dark, tall, human-shaped, adult-sized, but shadowy, or in the shadows. I'm not talking about some Slenderman type thing. I have no idea what it was. The only unlocked door was the front one, which I had just kicked in, and we had been standing 20 feet away from it the whole time. Nothing could have slipped past us and gotten in, so I sprint back inside, convinced there's an intruder. I rush upstairs and nothing, there's nothing there. I double-check everything, no place to hide, and that's it. The call is over. Sorry, No big punchline, no funny memes, just a weird, unexplained incident. For some reason, suicides have always hit me harder. I had a good friend who took his own life in high school, so suicide isn't just a delicate topic for everyone, it's especially personal for those who have experienced it firsthand. I've seen 3 gun suicides, 2 hangings, and a few cases where people intentionally overdosed or used other methods. To keep it short, this guy shot himself in his garage with a .357 Magnum. I have a pretty strong stomach, fortunately, thanks to experience. But I think I accidentally stepped on a piece of his eye. When I got the call, I went straight to the locker room and spent a solid 40 minutes cleaning the soles of my boots. I repeated the cleaning process at home too. Of course, that wasn't exactly scary, just disturbing. But here's one that was. We got a call from a hotel near the interstate. The staff went to clean a room and found a note taped to the bathroom door, which was shut and locked. It read, "Do not enter. Call 911. So the front desk did exactly that. When we arrived, they showed us the room. We knocked on the bathroom door, no response. We weren't sure if anyone was inside, but the hotel manager told us we had permission to force our way in. She was worried because none of the staff remembered the guest ever checking out. My partner forced the door open and it looked like something straight out of a horror movie. The guy was in the bathtub, completely naked. A knife was on the floor beside the tub. His wrists were slashed, but the worst part was the blood in the water. In over 10 years on the job, I had never seen that much blood. His face was ghostly pale and it looked like he was frowning. He didn't seem to be breathing. "Call a medic," my partner shouted. I just looked at him and said, no, the guy's dead. I'm not touching him. You can check if you want, but we need to get our supervisor, an EMT, and a detective in here. I could recognize a dead body when I saw one. I asked the manager, who was having a legitimate panic attack, to calm down and head back to the front desk while we handled things. I called for another unit and told dispatch to get our evidence techs and a detective on the scene. That's when I heard my partner yell, "Oh shit." I ran back inside and he was staring wide-eyed at the body. He just moved. That son of a bitch is alive, man. He moved. What are you talking about? He has a fucking pulse. It's really weak, but it's there. His leg moved under the water when I tried to check. Sure enough, I had to put on my big boy pants and barely managed to find the guy's pulse. The medic was called, and they rushed him to the ER. Turns out he had cut his wrists just minutes before the housekeeper found the note he barely survived. Edit for clarity. I need to remember not to post long stories from my phone. He survived, but it wasn't pretty. He slit his wrists while taking a bath. Most of what looked like blood was in fact blood, but it was mixed with water, making it look like there was way more than there actually was, and honestly, slitting your wrists isn't a great way to go. He thinks he had been bleeding for about 10 or 15 minutes before he started drifting off and would have been okay for a little longer as long as he got help. It really depends on a lot of other factors. And yeah, I should have been more proactive about checking for signs of life. It was irresponsible of me not to. In many cases, it's pretty easy to identify a dead body when you see one, but this one fooled us, and we learned from it. Luckily, my partner checked while I was stepping out and I wasn't about to stop him. My tone was a little more cynical. "Hey, guy looks dead. I really don't think we need a medic. You can check if you want, but I don't want to." And in our defense, he really did look 100 dead. No chest movement, pale skin, he looked like he'd been there for hours. But like I said, I was wrong, and I own up to that. Sometimes you forget that your experience and training aren't always objective, and being relatively new at the time, this was a lesson for me. You can bet that from then on we were both a lot more cautious. I received a report of a missing husband. He told his wife and their 6 children that he was going to get the tires changed, but he never came back. That was 12 hours ago. They had recently bought another house in a neighboring community, and his relationship with his wife was under strain. So she assumed he was at the other house and insisted that he would never take his own life. The strange thing about this report, however, was that he had emptied his personal bank account into hers that same morning. The wife explained that they had recently argued about finances, and he had admitted he was bad with money. He even suggested that they should just have a joint account that she would manage. On a hunch, I asked their 14-year-old son if there were any areas in the nearby mountains where his father liked to go. The boy pointed out a road about 10 miles away. It was almost midnight, but I decided to drive up that old, abandoned Forest Service road. As I made my way through the snow and started climbing, I had this gut feeling that I would find him up there, either thinking about suicide or having already gone through with it. The snow-covered gravel road showed some signs of recent traffic, but it was hard to tell how fresh the tracks were. After about an hour of driving, I reached the top and was honestly surprised that I didn't find his black pickup truck. On the way back down, I kept thinking about gut feelings, how unpredictable they can be, yet how this one felt different. As I descended, I noticed more than a dozen smaller roads branching off, none of them mapped. I had already spent too much time on a single case in a busy town with only a handful of officers, but I decided to check one of these side roads anyway. About 3/4 of the way down, I picked a random path to explore. Sure enough, my headlights caught the back end of a black pickup truck about 100 yards past the first curve. Even if I hadn't memorized his plate, I wouldn't have needed to run it. It was clearly his. I radioed in that I had found the truck, parked my vehicle, and walked the 20 feet to his door with my heart pounding as if I were running instead of just walking. What I found inside was a gruesome mess of brains and blood from a self-inflicted shotgun wound under his chin. I'll spare you the details. There was something about that gut feeling while driving up that silent, abandoned mountain road, followed by the sense of being deceived by it only to realize it was right after stumbling upon such a horrific scene, standing there for 3 hours beside his truck, waiting for the body to be removed and then having to go to his family who was still holding out hope for good news, only to deliver the worst news possible. It still gives me chills to this day. I'm interning at a sheriff's department, so I spend most of my time on patrol. We were called in for a welfare check, which the deputy thought would be easy. Maybe the person was just out of town or something. When we arrived, the neighbors told us that the mail had been piling up in the mailbox and there were several untouched packages on the porch. All right, so we walked up to the house. The front door was unlocked, so we cracked it open a few inches, and the deputy called inside, but the door wouldn't budge any further. The house was one of those split-level homes where the stairs meet right at the front door, with the upper and lower floors offset. We figured something might be blocking the door. That's when the deputy mentioned that the woman living there was a known hoarder, which could explain why the door was stuck. He also added, if we see flies inside the windows, she's probably in there, and she's probably dead. As we walked around the side of the house, we noticed a lot of flies covering the windows. The back door was locked, and when we peered inside, we saw bags and bags of trash, diapers, and all sorts of filth scattered everywhere. We went back to the front and tried again to get in. This time he pushed the door harder, and that's when I saw it. Something thick and greasy was oozing out from under the door. The deputy immediately stopped, shut the door, and calmly told me that the woman was definitely dead and wedged behind the door. Based on the package delivery dates, we estimated she had been there for about 2 months. Once the scene was processed and we were allowed inside, I got a closer look. After 2 months, she didn't even resemble a human body anymore. Her skin and flesh had liquefied and melted into the floor. Her face was completely black, eaten down to the bone by maggots. I'll never forget the smell when the coroners moved her and she burst. It wasn't just a smell, it felt like a physical presence in the air. Whatever those guys get paid to deal with this kind of thing, it's not enough. But what really got to me was the thought, had she fallen down the stairs and died instantly? Or had she fallen, unable to move, and waited for help that never came?